Hi, welcome back to the Evolution podcast with Mac and Jenn. We are here, and I am here with my incredibly handsome husband. I'm so excited to talk about today. We're going to talk about us again. This is our love story part 2, right?
Yeah, so the continuation of going over we hadn't covered everything. There were some key things that we did that are kind of unconventional to figure out, like how this was going to work. And so we're just going to kind of pick up where we left off a little bit, probably recap on a few things just to make sure it's congruent and go from there, right?
Okay.
Sounds good to you. Let me change this real quick. So I think we had talked about where we were as far as the like no sex, no kissing, and then to the point of engaging fully in the relationship and then continuing with that. And so moving from that into like diving full on into the relationship, cutting out everything else, any distractions or whatever, and just focusing on each other. It's something that has been very, very good and very beneficial. But at the same time, there's a lot that we deal with. It's not all just flowers and roses, type thing. There's a lot of stuff that I had to deal with, from financial issues, shutting things down, recreating things. Kind of like I was traveling a lot for work. And so there were times when she was alone, times when I was alone, when we were away from each other, and then we'd come together. But we spent a lot of intentional time together, making sure that we had those moments of continuation. And also, in the past, my life had revolved around, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to go work. And I just go work with the expectation of like, when we get there, we get there. And more so even before, a year prior to most of this, I had said, you know what, I don't really care what work looks like anymore. Like, I want joy. Like, I want to be able to find joy in my life. And if that means less money, then it means less money. It just, because it's like, what's the point? I've worked 40 years of my life like a maniac, off and on, doing this or that, but kind of looking at it being like, it's not paying off. Like, ultimately, it, like, all of it had ended in something like a breakup, a divorce, and then it's all gone anyway. So why would I do this again? Like, that's pointless. Like, but if I have joy and have these moments in time, like, you can never take those away from me, ever. So that became more of my focus. And so I'm very intentional about how I, interact with her, how I interact with myself, and those types of things. So at that point, it's like, yes, I still need to work. I have a situation that needs dealt with. I've got to figure some things out, and we work through that. And she's been very calm and patient with that, if not finding the good in it and how it can work, as do I. And then our time together is very intentional together. So that's kind of one of the challenges as we moved from the dating part of things into the relationship piece. Was like, okay, we're ready to move here, but then I'm gone for a week, or, and it may not seem like that big of a deal in the dating type of thing, but at that point we were already pretty well tied in. I had, one of the fascinating things was it was so easy to bring Jen into my world. Like, my friends, my family, like all the different people that I was around, it was almost, I don't know, it was in a way that was different than I'd ever experienced. Of my energy, like my internal energy, just didn't even question it. It was just like, let's go do this, come with me. And it was just so like smooth and natural, that it also made me very aware of, when I realized like how it was working and how it was flowing. I was like, there's something different. Like, I don't know exactly what's going on, but there's something so different with this. Like, it's like, I don't know, but I could feel the energy of it, and just know that, like, there's something here that's moving forward, at the same time having to be like, I don't know, like, I have to continue to be completely vulnerable, put my heart on the line, put everything on the line, without an expectation of an end result, like wanting an end result, wanting to go there, but not requiring that it's her, and getting caught up in like the drama that a lot of people get caught in. It's just kind of being like, okay, well, I mean, I'm going to do this. I guess we're going to see what she's going to do, and it's a little scary. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like when there's things like it might even appear like it's going to go this way, but you're like, I really want this, or vice versa. And just having to trust it and be like, well, I guess we're going to see what happens, but being completely exposed and vulnerable, hoping it goes your way, but not knowing if it will, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You want to add to that? Put your comments as far as that time frame, as far as when we went from the dating to the.
Yeah, it was good. For me, like, I just enjoyed the time and appreciated when you would invite me and bring me along and include me in all the things. And I was also too at a place where I wasn't having like expectations on where like this was going. Like, I was just focused on, for me, just re- and I try to do this all the time, is just appreciating and loving like moment to moment, every single moment. And so if you were like, let's do this, or like, let's go here, come meet these people, I was just kind of like, okay, let's do that. And like, me just going, making the best of it, having a great time, and then and letting go of like, or not trying to be anything in order to control the situation, just going, having good times moment to moment. And I think that's why it was a little different when you would take me along, or it felt different, was because like I was just going moment to moment, not really having big expectations, but just a lot of appreciation and having fun and enjoying the time. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I never felt like I had to like make sure you felt good about being there. You just made yourself comfortably there, and also made everyone else very comfortable. That was one of the most fascinating things, is that there was no show, there was no mask, no facade put on. Just like, hey, how's it going, who are you, what's this, what, in a quick little thing, and it was just natural and easy, and everything was fine. And that's kind of how we both show up in general. It's like we don't I don't think there's ever really a time that I think sometimes maybe you are a little bit wondering if I'm good, type of thing, because I just don't, sometimes I don't talk. And so she's like checking, like, is everything good? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just sometimes I just don't, but there's never a time when we go out and we have to worry about the other person, as far as like, are you good? Is everything good? Like, or do you feel comfortable? Do you know? It's just like, we just go and do, and it's easy. There's like no complications with it, and so that's a very beautiful thing to never have to really concern yourself with, because we see so many people getting caught up in the, well, what's the expectation? What's this? What's that? And it's just like, we don't have any of that. Right?
Mm-hmm. It was never like, I never feel like when I'm meeting people or your people, I'm never trying to like really be somebody to impress them, or be somebody to like, I don't think of them as like, well, this is Max blank, so I need to behave this way, even though I do show up like respectfully or whatever. But it's more like, when I go into those situations, it's kind of like, I just, how can I like see, like, appreciate why I've been brought here and my experience now with this person. And so just like, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
And like, how can I just love this person and love this moment and see like, why are we brought here together? What lessons? And so it's not like me trying to like impress or make people think a certain way about me. I just like show up and like, with just like more like ease and flow.
Yeah, and I think
I don't know.
I think even the first time you like came and met my parents, where like you wanted to come see me, so I was like, okay, great. And this is same vicinity where my parents are, so it's like, well, let's see how this works out. But I had a pretty good feeling about it. I'm just like, oh, I don't think this is going to be any issue whatsoever. But it's just in my mind, I think I was leaving a little more to the side of like, hey, this is who I am. Like this is part of the package. Like um I don't I don't I don't go to the point of like, well, you better like my parents type of thing. I'm like, I don't really care. Like if you don't, you don't, whatever. But I don't need anything from my parents, we'll put it that way. But I do want to know, like, do you know who I am? Like, I wanted to say like, hey, this is where I may have grown up. This is who my parents are. This is how things work in this over here. Don't really need it, but are you clear on who I am, what it's about, where do you find yourself? And just wanted to see like what happens.
Yeah, I think it was kind of like, to explain it a little better, it was like, if you weren't in the picture, like how can I love these, like everybody? Like even if you weren't here, like where can I find the love in this?
And you pretty much fit everywhere.
Hmm.
Because you're just so kind and loving. So even if you're not going to participate in some people's bullshit, you're still very kind and loving.
Hmm.
So it's definitely different from me. So
I loved getting
I'm
to
very
come meet your
I'm very
parents.
compassionate towards people, but not so much kind and loving. So I can understand situations, but I don't like to sit in them very long if they're not beneficial to me or us. So we go from meeting, everything working, kind of figuring out like, okay, I need to know more. Like there's something here, to like realizing that like everything that we're doing just keeps working and kind of showing up in a way that is beneficial every time. It's like, okay, well, what about this? Well, what about this? And it just keeps working. And then I think we went on our first trip together because we hadn't really gone anywhere before February when we went to the cheer thing, right?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I don't sure remember. I remember our first road trip together.
What was that?
I think that was going to Houston. Our first
Okay, so that
long
was,
road
yeah,
trip.
that was another thing. Oh, one of the, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but like I drive pretty crazy and she doesn't complain. So I was like, I don't know, maybe I should marry her. So that
That's
was,
the key right there,
yeah, that
ladies.
was,
Don't complain about the driving, and then you get the marriage
yeah,
proposal.
yeah. I I'm a very good driver, but very aggressive. We'll put it that way. And she just observed that I was intentional about what I was doing and that I was aware. And then she was okay with it to whatever degree she is, but she doesn't freak out, doesn't complain. She first figured out that I knew what I was doing and then was like, okay, he knows what he's doing. And so that's a different, I don't suggest anybody get in a car with some maniac that doesn't know what they're doing or that is extremely reckless. Like I'm a little crazy and aggressive driving, but I'm very, very aware. So there is a difference.
Right. And see, for me with your driving too, it's like I could create so many stories around your driving that could put me into a lot of fear. But like the truth is where I go with that is like, what can I appreciate about it? And like, and I move towards like how I want to feel. And so, your quote unquote crazy driving, whatever, could scare some people. And it's really not that bad, really. It's not that bad, but it's like I sit there and appreciate the fact of how I can see how like consciously aware you are, and how you are like, I actually feel safe when you're driving like that, which is weird. Like I kind of focus more on
Yeah.
what I appreciate about it. Like I appreciate how safe I feel. I appreciate how aware you are. I appreciate how decisive you are and how alert you are. Like I just appreciate those things rather than sitting in the fear stories. So
Yeah. So yeah, they're back to the travel. And we went to, I think Florida first together was where the first place we traveled. away, if I remember right.
Mm, I don't remember the
Yeah.
first place
So
we went.
I'm pretty sure outside of like meeting each other in different places or taking a day trip or whatever, um, we flew to Florida for my stepdaughter's cheer competition and went there, and everything was easy, smooth. After that, I go to California, about Orange County, to about every 3 months. And so I do a training, but she would come, hang out, and then do her own thing during that day. And there was never, ever any like complaints or any, like whatever. We just like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. You want to go? Yep, I want to go. Let's do this. Okay, well, this is what I have to do. I'm just very direct in my communication on like, okay, well, this is what you should expect. And she's like, okay, great. And then she just makes the best of it. And I'm like, okay, this is super easy. Like, I don't really have to pamper or do anything or worry or whatever. It's just like super easy the whole time. So we moved through that a couple more times, and then we took a road trip to Austin and then Houston and then back for a little retreat that I put on. And we were what, in 16, 15, 14, 16 hours in the car together,
Mm-hmm.
and just chill the whole time. Like, it was just a good time
Mm-hmm.
from what I remember.
It was a good time.
And and then from there to Houston, and then from Houston back. And since then we took another trip to Dallas. We went to UPW because we took her son, and so we're like, okay, let's just drive. And so we made, and it's just like, it's pretty easy traveling together. And over the summer, we took a trip to Yellowstone, where her and her son drove up to Wyoming, met me while I was up there, and then jumped in my car. And then we spent 3 days in the car, pretty much traveling through Yellowstone, seeing the sights, hit Jackson, then went to the north part up in Little Hot Springs up north of Yellowstone, and then back. And it's a lot of time to be in the car and to not really have any real um like, it's just natural. And all I can say is to contribute to how that works is that we're just honest. We just speak our feelings, we say who we are, and then we just know where we stand. And there's not, not just with driving, but just with life. Like, one of the reasons why we haven't had any real arguments or anything is because there hasn't been any reason to feel attacked, because we're honest. Like, we are choosing in every single day as we go through this. I'm gonna turn to you a little bit, just to kind of see. I'm giving my version. Maybe even go back to like when I decided, when I said, hey, I want to pursue a relationship with you at this point. Like, we are no longer dating. I want to be with you. For me, it was kind of like, I'm making this decision, and then you just kind of like were there with me, but you also had to make that decision. Was there any, like, tell me about your, I've never asked this before. So tell me about your kind of where you were, your side, and moving through till, half the year pretty much on that.
Yeah, so when you made the decision and I was on board with it, like I was already, um if you like, I don't know how to explain this.
Just say it however you want. We can juggle it.
Um, when I was like dating, I had like everybody kind of in spots. And so I had like the A spot, the B spot, the C spot, the D spot. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when somebody is in the A spot, typically like the A spot gets all my energy, all my attention. The A spot's the one like showing up. The A spot I'm excited about. And when I have an A spot, like I don't really pay attention to anybody else, like the B, C, D, E, like they don't really exist at all. Because if you're, not in the A spot, you don't really get it. But the A spot is the one that gets all my energy, all my attention. And as long as they continue to show up for me, like I continue to show up for them. When they stop showing up, that's when they get replaced. And so most guys before you who like I'd put one in the A spot and I'd be like, okay, this one's like, he's worthy. And I would treat him like an A spot. But if I wasn't feeling it back, or if I wasn't if it just wasn't meeting my needs, and I just wasn't feeling good in it, I would immediately like move them down, and then find somebody else to put in the spot, or the spot would just be empty for a while. Like it just, and so, but if they
Just have a couple B contenders,
there was the
the B
contenders,
plus, B minus.
but really if they're in the B spot, they're not worthy of it. They're not getting anything, because I don't want to be with a B spot. I want an A spot. And so like they go in the A spot. This is dating, when they're in the A spot, they're in the A spot until they're no longer in the A spot, and then they're done basically. And so when you came along, you immediately went into my A spot, which basically meant that I was excited about you, giving you all my energy, like I wanted to get to know you better, and I was just really enjoying my time with you. So you remained in the A spot, and you just kept showing up. I did my, on a scale of 1 to 10, how is he meeting my needs? Like, okay, this feels good. It just kept feeling good, feeling good, feeling good. And I just knew like as we progressed, I feel like a masculine man leads the relationship, leads the way, and I want to be chosen. And he just kept showing up, kept showing up, kept showing up, and then he was moving the relationship along. And then you said, no, like I want to like go all in and pursue this. And I was of course on board with it, because you were in the A spot, and you showed up, and you continued to show up. And so of course I said yes. Like there was no reason for me not to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So was there any thoughts in your mind about like how long is this going to go on, and how long would it be before you were like, something's got to change?
Um, no, not really, because even though we didn't kiss for 4 months, and then but it was like the whole our whole time together, I was enjoying it, and I was learning, and I was growing and having fun, and all my needs were being met, as far as like, you gave me certainty. We were having fun together. I felt important to you. Like we were growing together. Like everything was always good. That it never crossed my mind like, well, when is he going to do this, or when, I mean, of course I was like getting anxiously excited about the kiss, and like, I wanted you to kiss me, and like I wanted to know. But it was like, if it ever had gotten to a point where it was like I wasn't okay with what was happening, you would have been replaced.
Mm.
So
Mm.
you weren't. And I never moved you down. Like I will move people down out of the A spot before I have a replacement. Like I'm not afraid to be alone. But it's like, but I would have just moved you down, and I would have said, I'm not feeling what I want to feel. I'm not getting, what I want out of this. Um, and this is no longer fun. And so if that was the case, I would have moved you down, and I would have been back on the apps. But that was never the case. So you just remained in the top.
So after that, kind of moving forward with things, like was there anything that you remember that stood out, as far as, like for me, like even the road trip thing was kind of a big deal. Like I'd never been able to road trip with anybody and not have some type of a disturbance in that in that much time.
You were just, I mean, uh, there were little things like even when we walk, and you move me to the inside when we're walking, like that is a huge like yay. um you open the doors for me, and like when you send me sweet text messages, um Like there's all these like little things that you do. So I wasn't worried about the road trip. Like I knew we were gonna have a great time. And so, but there's just always all these little things that you do, and you still do these little things even after, like now that we're married, like you still, like the other day when there was a blanket on the driver's seat to keep my legs warm when I'm driving, but he got in the driver's seat and moved the blanket into the passenger seat so it would be warm when I sat down. And as soon as I opened the car door or he opened the car door and I saw the blanket there, I was like, "Oh my God, like thank you. Like you think of me." And like it was just so sweet. So it's just like these little things that you do, these little intentional things that you continue to do.
Yeah, and I was thinking about kind of just thinking about that. You know, for me, like I pay attention to like I'm kind of aware of a lot of different things happening. It also can make me very analytical. It can make me seem like robotic almost sometimes. But what's cool is that like it's just who I am, and she finds the appreciation in who I am. Whereas sometimes other people don't find the appreciation in it. And then there's going to be other guys that maybe are clueless to some of this stuff, but you can still find the person that loves you for who you are. Right. Like that's the key, is like when you're truly honest and you're not faking it to get something or doing this. It's just like you're genuinely being yourself. The other person will match. Like they will find like there's just this unique thing. It's almost like a blueprint that comes together of like these the things that I think are normal, like that I don't even wouldn't even necessarily think of or whatever, and I do them sometimes, and she just appreciates the shit out of them, and I'm like, well, that's cool because I don't even have to think about it. I just do that.
Right. But
So
I will say that like um I think that's part of the like getting to know each other thing. And it's like if you are just, being you and say, let's just pretend like there's a moment where you are so focused on what you're doing and I'm like feeling a certain way about it, rather than judging what you're doing, like I try to be really intentional about trying to understand.
mm,
Right. And that's why sometimes I'll ask questions, or even if I'm like, are you good? Like, because I don't want the stories in my head to be telling me like, oh, he's not good, or he's, I need to do this, or there's no, it's like, I try, I feel like love is seeking to understand. And I do love you, and I don't want to, and I want to love all parts of you, but sometimes I don't understand all parts of you because I'm still learning about you even till today, and so it's like when you're just being you, I do appreciate it and I do love you, but if I'm trying, but I'm also wanting to know, and so that's why I'll ask questions sometimes, like trying to understand. Okay, so and then you tell me, no, I'm just so like I get so focused, I'm this, I'm that, and then I understand it, and I'm like, oh, now I can appreciate it.
mm,
So sometimes it takes a moment of understand, like I need to understand what's happening before I can fully appreciate what's happening.
yeah, and the the mix of that is like I can kind of see sometimes when she's like asking questions like are you good or this that, and there's an initial response of me, I'm like, yeah, of course I am, like why are you asking me that, but at the same time I'm also reading her energy to be like, why is she asking this. And there's I've heard this happen before, seen it happen where somebody's like, why are you always asking me if you get it? Like there's a problem where they're not content enough with themselves to just like look, like she just said, she appreciates kind of where I'm, like if she knows where I'm at, she can appreciate it, find the way. Well, it's the same thing. If she asks me those questions, I can look at where she's at and appreciate that, like who she is who she is, and that's beautiful. Right. Like I don't want to, I don't, there's like, I don't want to change who she is, like at the core of her character. Like there might be things where we assist each other and things where we're like, well, I'm trying to get to here, but I'm kind of dealing with this, and this. And then you can assist in those things, but you also have to be aware of like what you're accepting too in the moment. Like you're accepting what it is. Like when someone tells you who they are or shows you who they are, it's kind of who they are. And you have to be able to accept that 100% before it's ever going to change. Because if you apply pressure to it, then it becomes a conflict. And conflict never really helps that much, right? So sometimes there might be a call out or something, but not conflict isn't going to, or pressure isn't necessarily going to help. And so, I don't know. It's just, I think one thing too is like you can trust that if you ask me a question, I'm going to give you a direct answer.
Mhm.
And the answer isn't going to um, look like, hey, is everything good? And me going, I'm fine. It's that's not the answer, right? The answer is I'm good. Like I might even say, is there a reason why you're asking? Because I'm curious, like, is there something that I missed? You know, and just whatever. And sometimes I can even sense that there's like something that's confusing things. I'll just be like, hey, is there something that seems off? Like was there one thing that I did? And I'm genuinely looking to answer her question, not defend my position, right? Like that's a like, okay, well, she needs something here. She needs some certainty or comfort or whatever. So I'm just going to give it to her in a very direct, honest way, but loving and compassionate. And so when you can get answers, your questions answered very, very directly, keeping in mind that we all have the ability to read energy, right? So when somebody says something like, "Oh no, I'm fine," but we can tell that there's energy off. Now, most people will take it personal, like, "Oh, I did something," or they think I did something, or whatever. But it could be like something that has nothing to do with you. Like they might have got caught up in their mind over a thought or triggered by a message that somebody, and they're processing it and they can't figure it out, and they're like, "No, I'm fine." And but with us, at least I do it. I don't know if you're as fast to do it, but if something is off, and if I were to get the "I'm fine," I'd be like, "No, you're not." Like, what's going on? And I'm just direct. I'm like, I don't really care um what's what. I can just feel it. And so if I feel it and I know it's not me, now keep in mind, like it takes a person that is mostly emotionally like strong. Like you've got an emotional integrity about yourself that you're actually aware of when it's you or when it's them. And so there's certain things where it might happen, and I get all worked up and inside and feel something, and I'm like, if I'm even questioning about how I've been showing up, then it's me. But if I'm like, well, I don't, I might even say, well, I'm pretty sure it's not me because I don't think there's anything to question right now in this moment. It still could be, but I'm pretty sure it's not. So I'm just going to call it out and be like, no, I don't think you're fine. Like something seems off, like tell me about it. And it's not an attack, it's not anything else. It's just like, just talk, because most of the time when you talk, this story that's happening based on a possible message you got from somebody, like your mom said something, your brother said something, your friend commented in a stupid way or did something, your kid did something, and you're processing it. It's just like being the person that can actually talk without emotion, or without needing to be involved in it or needing some outcome from it. So it's just a neutral space to communicate. A lot of times it's, if she says, well, this isn't an example, but it's a hypothetical. If it's like, well, so and so said this, and I just go, well, is that true? Like, genuine question, is it true? Well, no. Okay, but it's affecting you. Yeah. Okay. What do you want to do about it? Well, I don't, and it just pretty soon it's just like gone. And the ability to have those level of communications, and even if it's me, like I'm off, and I'm thinking I'm fine, don't worry about it, but I'm like, she's not asking me this question because I'm fine and don't worry about it. She's asking me this question because she can tell that something, it doesn't fit. And so that tells me that probably that's something she might be taking personal. I don't want her taking it personal. So in case that is, let me try to give some level of explanation so she can be at ease. Right. So I'm like, well, you know, I'm just thinking, I don't know how to explain it, but my thoughts are over here. And then I'm thinking about this and thinking about that. And because of that, I'm like gung ho ready to go or engaged in this and kind of getting more structured in things. And like, but then it begins to create the correct story in the mind that's as like, oh, good luck. you know, it's like if she can see my mind is like, and she's like, whoa, is everything good? Like, and I'm like, well, I'm just thinking about work, 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 work. And I spell it out. And she's like, yeah, there's nothing I can do about this, but at least I know it's that we're good on this part. So, and then she can support me.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if I'm like, I'm fine, she can't support me in that. Right. Like, that's not going to work because she's going to be like, did you take something the wrong way? Did I do something? Like, I don't, because my work is not in front of her. So it's not logically going to make sense of like the feelings that she's feeling and the stuff that's happening in my head. It doesn't connect. Being aware enough to actually see what's happening and quickly be like, let me solve this, boom, done, and we move. And it's just being honest. Like, it's kind of just the willingness to expose, like, and even if it's like, I don't know how to figure this thing out, or I'm fucking angry. And I know she doesn't like complainers, but sometimes I complain. Okay. Sometimes I process information through this motherfucker, like I'll bitch about somebody or something. But I'm processing and I try to do it less, cause I don't want that happening much, but I very much appreciate that sometimes she just lets me do it and then lets it go. And so I'm like, okay, good. That's like, I appreciate that, but I also don't need to be bringing everything here. Right. Like, that could be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and sometimes I'll catch myself and realize what I'm doing and kind of be like, time to change the subject. And I'll just talk about something else immediately. And so there are things that I have to be aware of for myself, but this is just really comes down to be honest. Ultimately, just be direct, be honest, and expose the feelings that you kind of don't want to feel sometimes because they're feeling it at the same time. And you can't get away from that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You want to add to that?
No.
No, you sure?
I think so. It was good.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You're
Okay.
really good at what you're, sharing. So
translating.
You're really good at translating it. I love hearing you speak.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
So let's fast forward to like what actually took place. And this was a key event of what took place from the time when like relationship was good, everything was good, but a moment in time that kind of came to me of like, what are we doing? Like, ultimately, what are we doing? Are we gonna get married, or are we not? Are we, because really, if we're not getting married, we're wasting time. And that's not a lot of what I have left of. And I also, like, I still want to have my own kids. I've got stepkids, but I still have an intention of having my own kids. I'm like, I don't want to waste her time. I don't want to waste my time. And it's getting to the point where we should have a pretty clear understanding of who we are. um I also know the pattern of like, once you get intimate and you start having sex and you're practically living with each other, then there's no reason. Right. It's like, why would you get married? Because it's like, what's the point? Like, and it's very easy to kick that ball. Right. Like, yeah, we'll figure it out 2 months later. Oh shit, yeah, let's figure it out a month later, 2 months later, 6 months later, a year later. And all of a sudden people are unhappy, you don't know what the fuck you're doing. And it's like, no, I want to know. Like, we've proven enough to get some idea of either what needs to happen next. And at that point in time, like, I couldn't tell you what needed to happen next. I wasn't sure. I wasn't like, am I doing this or am I doing this or whatever? It's just like we were just kind of coasting through life and everything was great. It was like, I mean, this is good. And a lot of people would say, like, why disrupt something that's good? It's like, because I want great. Like I didn't sign up for good. You know, we're both growth driven, right? Like we don't do good. we burn, murder good to get great. Right. And so I, with my coaches and other people that I work with, I was bringing this up of like, man, I don't like, I just have this feeling that I need to figure this out. And some of that is like, I get called out too, right? Like the good coaches will call you out and ask you questions just like we do. I'm like, hey, well, what do you actually want? I'm like, well, you know, like there was kind of a moment there where I was like, what do I want? Like, why not? Like, I want to be married. I want to have kids. I want to do these things, but what the fuck am I doing about it? You know, this is my internal conversation with myself. And I'm like, well, shit. Now that I'm here, now I have to know. What am I gonna, you know, and so this is all happening unaware. She's completely unaware of this. And so then I kind of start bringing it up a little bit, but I pretty much come to the conclusion that I needed to know. And one of the ways that I felt like I would get the most direct answers from God and not from like myself or men, because my mind would say, you don't want to get married until you have enough money. You don't want to get married until you've got a nice house. You don't want to have, you know, like all these excuses, right? Like all these excuses of why, but yet I understand God enough to know that God's like, you know what, why would I give you the perfect woman, the potential for this or this or what, like all these things that I've given you for you to wait on things that are like, that will not be with you in the end. They're irrelevant. Like you want to hold the construct of a worldly obsession, which is like enough money, a big enough house, or this or that, or timing or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to cut it. I don't want my decisions based on man. I want them based like God backed. You know, that's how I know that things are moving in my favor, our favor. And so I decided, well, at first kind of just was more of an idea of like, well, maybe we should like stop having sex and shut it off for a while to see what happens. And I'd kind of thought about it, and part of it was like, you know, there is a part of me that was raised as far as like don't have premarital sex, and so I was dealing with that guilt of that in a sense. And I'm like, well, I can't get clear if I feel guilty. Like I don't feel like God's going to talk to me, or and I don't mean talk, I mean like show me, you know, like God, I don't hear God's voice or anything. I just, there's certain things that happen, or I get intuitive things that come up where I'm like, I know where that's coming from. That's a clear, true intent that needs to happen. And so I decide that, well, I guess it's pretty easy. Just give it up for a little while. Like what, like in the big picture, who really like to give it up for 30 days, even like, you know, all I could see was benefit. One, clear communication. There's a like law of the universe that basically says, if you're willing to give something up, it shows how committed you are to getting something. You know, it's like, we'll say it as an, are you teachable? And it's like, if you're not willing to give up what you love the most, you're not teachable, because that thing that you're hanging on to could actually stop you from learning and seeing the truth. And so it's like, one, you listen to the truth, listen to people who have like, this is the personal development side. It's like, only listen to people that have what you want and have been where you are, because they're the only ones that actually know. And more so, they're the only ones that you are actually going to trust, right? Because if they haven't done it in your way, you're going to find a way to justify it out and get away from it. Then the second thing is being teachable, which means willingness to learn, but also like, what are you willing to give up? And a lot of times it's money, you know, like, you know, are you willing to give up money to get that thing? Are you willing to give up money to invest? Are you willing to give up money to travel? Are you willing to do, you know, whatever? But it's also time. But a lot of times it's also anything that controls you. And addictions will control you. Sex will control you. And so it's like when you give these things up, you get very intentional, and your mind becomes very clear on what you want, and it causes more focus. And law of attraction, we use that quite often. It's just a helpful way to explain like how God does things. When you're giving something up, your focus becomes so intent on what you want that now you are focused on it all the time, right? And the law of attraction basically says what you focus on the most is what you will get. Now, if you're focused on the risk of a failing relationship or getting hurt or anything like that, that's what you're gonna create. But for me, it was like, I know how this works. Let's do this. And so I run it by her, and she's kind of like, okay, like, I talked it through it. But even then, it was hard because let me turn to you. What was going through your mind as I'm bringing this up and saying these things?
I think my first thought was like, who is this guy? This guy's crazy. I'm just
Yeah, yeah. Like, who the
um
fuck does this? Like,
yeah, like what? um it was like, are are we going to break up? Um
why?
is there something wrong with me
Yeah,
at
what
first?
was it about that like that made you think like, is this a breakup, or is this like what? Why would that be?
Because I think when you were, it felt like you were really questioning our relationship.
Okay.
And I think that questioning, at first it scared me.
Hmm.
But now when I look at it as questioning, it's actually like I can see it was actually a really good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think my first initial reaction was, this is scary because I really like him, and now he's questioning.
Well, I was putting everything on the chopping block,
Yeah,
right? Because it's like, what are we doing?
yeah.
Are we going to get married, or are we going to? Because if we're not, we're done.
So it was scary at first, and it was like, and I was like, oh, what's gonna happen? And then through my questioning, and really telling me like why, what was happening, giving me more certainty, gave me certainty. And I was like, actually, this is a really good idea, because if it does tell you what it needs to do, whatever is brought to the surface here is for both of our benefits. So like, let's do this.
Yeah, I remember you asking me, so you're not having sex with me because you don't love me, or it was kind of a weird, very strange, maybe even a triggered response. And it kind of caught me off guard. I was like, that doesn't sound like normally something you would say, because it was more of a reactive type statement, although you said it in a very calm way. Um, and I was like, no, I'm doing this because of how much I love you,
Mhm.
right? Like there's if if I wasn't madly in love with somebody to find out if I was going to marry them, like I would never just stop fucking them. Like it would be like, yeah, I'm getting everything like physically that I want here and fulfilled in multiple different ways. The only reason I would actually stop is that like I need to know, right? Like, because for me, you can love people and them not be right, right? It's very easy to get in a trap of love, of like, I mean, I can love people very fast, very very easily, and find a lot of good things about them. But this was more like, no, I don't want us to get stuck in a trap that's not going to serve us, both of us.
I really appreciate the intention behind it. I appreciate the thought, and like your ability to move this relationship forward,
Mm.
and to give me certainty. And that's what it all did. Like the thought, the conscious man, like, I mean, yes.
Mm.
And even though, like, what if we stopped having sex and you just ended up saying, you know what, actually this isn't what I want. This isn't, you're not, I don't want to move forward. Like, yeah, it would have hurt, but it also would have been like a blessing for both of us, because then we both could have moved on to, even me moving on to somebody who would be more
even
aligned.
better, which would have been hard to imagine, but we both stood in that space.
And so like I was willing, I think because we both are so into growth, I was willing to also like restrict with the intention of where this could take us. So I was after the initial like, what? Like, are you sure? Do you still love me? Like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I get it. Like I'm excited too, because this will show us a lot, and we can either move forward in our relationship, or we can do, it'll hurt, but then we can end things, and then we can move towards, what we really want.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy because like even though we say these things, I think we were both more concerned with like hurting the other person than actually about like what we were going to deal with. Although we didn't want to have to deal with being single again after we'd found something so great. Like it was like, man, I really don't want to have to like for her to go through that. Like I know I can go through it, but I don't want her to have to go through that. And then she's kind of the same way. So it's like, oh, I know I can figure it out, but I don't want to, like you wind up caring so much about the other person. It's like, oh man, this is a box of just messy emotions. And you have to keep yourself clear and centered. So at that point, we decided to do it. Right. And for the first month, it was pretty much like no contact like no sexual contact. So like clothes usually stayed on type of thing, whatever. There was some good kissing, I think was about it. But even that was kind of a little bit limited because we knew where that could lead. And then again, we wound up back in California, and I got real curious because we were coming up on like 20 days of the third, because initially it was like 30 days, no sex, let's just see what happens, and then go from there. And so we're like 20 something days in, and I'm like, I don't know that I have the answers I'm looking for yet. Like I'm not sure what to do. And I want these answers. And I don't want to really keep going. I don't want to keep doing this, like I either want to be fully engaged or whatever, but I'll wait if I have to. But it forced me to get very direct with some questioning of like, hey, what's going on here? What about this? Like, do you understand that like here's a potential in a direction that I could wind up going? Would you follow me if I go here? If we're doing this, will you follow me? Like, well, what about this? Well, what about that? And I'm just like almost grilling in a sense. Do you remember that? Yeah.
On the bed.
And well, also at the park.
In the car.
Yeah. Yeah, like there was multiple times where I'm like really curious, and I think again it triggered a like
in the car at the grocery store.
Or no, it was at the park, wasn't it?
No, outside of the grocery store with the Starbucks, I think.
Yeah, and anyway, I think there was a mixture of all of it. Because we sat at the park for a while too.
Yeah, we did sit at the park for a while.
So anyway, again, she starts to go like, are you breaking up with me? Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, why are these questions coming up? And a lot of it's coming up because I'm in training at the time. Like the reason I go to California is I'm in a men's training coaching thing. And there's these conversations that are coming up that are very intentional, very deep conversations, along with me kind of looking at things going, well, what are we doing? Like I need something, some level of like knowing what's happening here. And I get impatient. I'm just like, I have to know, like, talk about it. And once it's in my mind, I know that if I don't talk about it, then it's not going to get talked about. So then I'm just like, I just start figuring it out, just dumping it. And so I started asking very direct questions, and as she answered them, what she was doing was answering in such a way that I was like, this is what I was looking for, right? Like one thing after another. Even I think it was like that was the first time you also told me of just how much you like you said it in the form of like, you're wrapped around my finger, right? Remember that?
I'm wrapped around your
Yeah,
finger.
you said that in some form, but
Yeah,
but it wasn't like,
those words would come out of my mouth.
yeah. And so that kind of hearing that kind of let me know like, oh, like I didn't really think that. I don't really pursue that or anything, but it helped me see just how emotionally committed she was, and how like, it's at a level that like we can just figure it out. Like no matter what, we can just figure it out.
Mm.
And so like some of those very vulnerable things that were said in that time, it didn't necessarily answer the question, but it gave me the feelings that I was hunting. Right? There were certain things that I said, this is what I wanted. And then when she started to show me what was the full extent of it, I started getting those feelings. And that was the confirmation that I was looking for. So while we were there, actually, I made the decision of like, no, like I'm in. What, like I'm getting married, or like where do you find yourself? And we basically at that point decided that we were getting married, um, bought the ring and moved on. But I said, here's the deal. We're not gonna have sex until we're married. so so that threw a whole nother thing in, and then we're like waiting for the ring, and then it's like this, and then it's not showing up, and we're traveling, moving around, trying to figure it out, trying to find somebody to marry us, trying to figure out how we're going to do it. And at the end of the day, I just said, she was cool, right? You're cool with not having a big
Hmm.
wedding. Talk about that for a second, because I'm sure the ladies are be like, what? Like, no, you just saying that?
Yeah, I mean, I have already been married once and had a big wedding, and so that experience for me, even though it was like nice and I'm grateful of having gone through it, like it was just a lot of stress and it was a show and all these things, and it was like it was a great experience, but I really wanted something different this time and just something more like that felt more deep and like soul connecting and like I want to use the word special, like just special like between like us. And so I was cool with not having like a big wedding and involving everybody and because these days I'm really low stress. And so I just didn't want to I was totally okay with not doing that. I wanted something that felt deeper, like more soul connecting, like just us where we could just really just be together.
Yeah. So as we moved forward with things, our intimacy got heightened extremely. Like when sex is off the table, or more so like no orgasms, right? Which means no masturbation, no orgasms, period. It drives you to like, like it starts getting a little, we start pushing the boundaries a little more, a little more, a little more. And it was fun, right? Like, I mean, people can say it's right or wrong. I don't really care. What was cool about it was we begin to see a different sexual side of intimacy and heightened passion and emotion that was like nuts. Right. So, like wanting it so bad, and then doing this, and then like happening, like wanting it very fast and quick, but not, and just waiting, and then prolonging, and then teasing, and like all this craziness that came from this experience of like getting to see what can happen, of like you can restrict and watch what happens, right? When you restrict something, it becomes more valuable. It's a simple, like what human nature, I guess. And so it just did something that showed us some really cool stuff, right? And so that was fun. That was exciting, fun, and also been very beneficial. But it came to the point where, about a month after that, maybe a little further, we just got to the point where it was like, trying to get everything in place for this. The reality is, this has nothing to do with the world. Our decision to get married had to do with us and God, period. That was it. And so they're understanding that a lot of people were going to be like, and be like, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't this? Why didn't that? And then it's like, okay, well, then if I invite you, then I got to invite this person, then I got to do this. And I'm like, no, stop. We're just going to, I tried to get a hold of somebody to marry us, but you know what? In Colorado, you don't have to have somebody marry you. You can self-marry. So eventually I was like, I've had enough of this. Like this is not about other people. This is about us and God, period. And I would rather look right in God's eyes than in anybody else's. And I don't care. Like, I've made the decision. She's on board. We're going to do this, and we're going to do it in front of God and get it done. And so that was the final decision. And so we decided to drive up in the mountains, found a beautiful spot, one that we felt was like a memorable spot, and kind of exchanged our vows, did our thing back and forth, and we were married. And that was that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different, to say the least. I would say special.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was special. The whole experience, this whole experience has been special.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the interesting things, like, of the human nature side of everything, is like, as soon as we got married, it dumped a pile of triggers on the table for both of us. It was like, oh no, now what? And then you start remembering all the shit that you just dealt with, that you got away from in a past relationship, and it starts to come up. Well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what's she gonna think? Well, and it's like all this just came flooding in for both of us, of like, oh shit, now, like, your mind almost wants to say, now you're trapped, right? Like, fuck, but it's like, what? Like, when you rationally look at it and be like, where the hell is this coming from? We know where it comes from, but it's still like having to work through it and say, no, I don't accept that. We're going to do it different. And then being very intentional about what we're going to create moving forward and in the future, and still having to constantly kind of deal with some of that past memories of doing it wrong, and saying, like, nope, this is what I'm going to create, and then trusting the process and continuing to move in that direction over and over again. So very challenging. Do you want to add to that at all, or?
I don't think so.
Do you agree?
I do agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's crazy, wasn't it? Like, it was almost like overnight. You go to sleep one day, you wake up the next, it's like,
It was like, oh, now we're married. Now there's new things happening, new quote unquote rules, and triggers, and like, what does this mean? And yeah, so then it did bring out some more, but it's all good because it's just been a lot of growth, and so yeah, it's been good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we just keep doing, keep moving forward in a way of making sure that things are taken care of. One of the things that I do daily activities to make sure I'm on point. And one of those things is just doing my best to make sure that she hears from me. Even if I'm out of town, it's like, it could be a message. We talk all the time, so we're always connected. But it's always nice to have that little extra nudge, and it's kind of easy for me to forget about it because I'll get to working and everything else. But I have to remember, hey, you like it too. Like, make sure, and she probably likes it a lot more than you do, so make sure you give it to her. Right? Like, make sure you give her that, hey babe, or whatever it is, to like encourage the relationship to, you have to focus on the areas of your life that are important, and your relationship is vitally important. Your connection with God is probably the most important. Your relationship is probably second. It is second. It's not probably. And then it goes to well, I guess your body's kind of mixed into it, because if you trash your body, you're screwed. But that should be almost mixed in with your connection to God. And one of the things that I focus on too is saying, like, I need to keep my body in such a way that she likes it. Right. Because, like, that's something that, yes, I need to keep my body in shape to stay connected with God, to provide and do everything else. But it's also something of, like, I think about it this way. I don't know how she thinks about it, but I think about it this way of, like, I want her to always look at me with like attraction. Okay. So I'm going to keep myself there so that she can continue to follow me. Right. Like she will say she will submit to me. Okay. I'm like, well, if she's going to do that, then I need to make sure that she has a good reason to, not just spiritually, emotionally, but also physically, also sexually, all these different things. And so I focus on my relationship, not mainly with her, but also other relationships daily. I focus on my body daily. I focus on my spirituality daily, and I focus on my business daily. But business is easy to focus on daily. Like in the world we live in, that one's kind of a mandatory thing. So you have to be more intentional about it. It has to be like, what are you doing to grow? But at the end of the day, with her, I'm like, I need to love on her in some way. And some days it's a lot more than others. And some days it's very minimal, but it has to be intentional about like, don't lose focus. Do it every day. Make sure it's being done. If it's the person that is the most important person in your life, then this shouldn't be a problem. So yeah, I've been doing most of the talking. Your turn.
No, you've been doing so good. Like that was really good. I don't know what else to add to any of that, except for the fact that I think it'd be fun to share that we have talked about doing like or times in the future where we don't have sex. Just because
Just to see what happens.
Just to see what happens, because it was a cool experience. And so I do say, if you want to grow your relationship, take away sex for a little bit and see what happens.
You take it away, you agree to remove it, but you still be intimate. Right, like see what happens. Like that's the cool thing, because like some people would be like, well shit, I've already given up for a month and haven't had sex for blah blah, it's whatever. It's like, yeah, maybe you need to look at things a little different.
Yeah, and like we weren't having orgasms, so like still you can be intimate, but take it to, you can stop before it gets to that point.
Yeah, so the first month was like nothing really other than kissing. We're like clothes on intimacy, and then after that, once the decision was made, then it was like no orgasms, like, but well, and also no like real penetration, like no sex, more or less. But it would have been easy to be like, well, we're not having sex, but we're getting off every day. So that is like, no, that's not what we're, like, and it just kind of kept escalating. So it is what it is. Everybody's going to have their own boundary on that. But for us, it was a very crazy, amazing thing. And I think that like even a once a year is almost like, you can do a once a month fast for your body, and it resets your body and it kind of redoes everything and reorganizes your energy. And for sex, it's more like, you do 30 days once a year, it's going to reset some shit. I guarantee it, especially when you want to be intimate, and then you start, your mind plays all these tricks on you. Like, well, what's she thinking? Well, what's he thinking? Well, what's this?
I just couldn't believe sometimes how like we didn't go a little farther. And in my mind, I was like, come on, like, just do it. Like, and you displayed such good discipline and control. And I was like, come on, man.
Yeah, the wants and desires begin to wind up all over the place. But
it was so good. I'm so glad that you stuck with it. We stuck with it because it was good. So, all right.
Okay, well, we'll end it on that, but that's kind of mostly the craziness of our beginning to end of dating, a little pre-date, and then marriage, and slightly after marriage journey, and then just continuing with it and continue to make sure that we keep everything intact and feel like we're growing, feel like we're connected and emotionally intact, and hopefully just always have that for the rest of our lives and go to places that we've never even thought of before. So it's gonna be exciting.
Yay.
All right, so see you guys.
See you next time.
Maybe.